Thank you very much, Gert. It was great pleasure to see you, to hear you direct from New York. But let's get going. As I mentioned before, the National CERT is celebrating its 15th birthday this year. Even though Mr. Tõnu Tammer, who is the head of CERT, was not able to be here with us today in person, we will kick off the webinar with an overview of using data to ensure cybersecurity.
So what good is data if you're not using this? Many of the organizations are probably asking these kinds of questions on a daily basis. Do we have the right information? Do we have the data? What can we do with this data? How can we turn the data into meaningful information? How can we act upon that? This is a good question. Also in terms of our daily work, this is one of the key questions that we are constantly trying to look at. We, who are at the forefront of Estonian cyberspace for 15 years already, this is our 15th anniversary, we have been thinking about this for a long time, and most of our work is actually driven by data. Also incidents, when they occur, and which we would like to have occurring less and less, but most of the operations are driven by data. Not only our anniversary is this year, we have been part of Information System Authority from day one. RIA is also celebrating our 10th anniversary, which was only 2 days ago, or yesterday. In 15 years, the cyberspace has grown a lot, and so has our work grown a lot. When we look at the task ahead of us, we need to look at the numbers. Estonian cyberspace might seem small if we think that we have one IP address per citizen. That's if we look at version 4, IPv4. However, if we look at IPv6, the numbers grow a little bit. There is more than 5 decillion addresses per one citizen. That's 10 to the power of 24, more than I can ever imagine. And this is just per one person. If we count those numbers together, times 1.3 million, the amount of work that is ahead of us is mind-blowing. And this is not all. We can't just look at the big numbers. We have to look at them worldwide. Because when we look at Estonian domain space, we see that this is truly global. This is one more example of how cyber does not know borders. We are next door neighbors to Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Chile, you name it. We're all on this boat together. And we've been doing this for 15 years, and I hope that we've been doing some impact towards the good. Let's look at the data. Every team that works in this field collects a number of different aspects of data, but also from different sources. We get a lot of information from incident reports. We get a lot from conducting the investigations even further. By far, perhaps most of the information comes from outside, from different open source intelligence communities, what they see. Our own and other honeypots which are out there are also producing a lot of information. And of course, last but not least, commercial sources, aggregated, sometimes better, sometimes worse, but there is a lot of information. If someone is saying that they do not have a good understanding of what is happening in cyberspace, they are probably not putting the data that they have into good use. It's not easy. Understanding what is behind numbers takes effort. But having the data is just one aspect. Being on top of the hill doesn't make you king. Having heaps of data doesn't make you a good team. What makes it a good team is sharing, putting that data that you have into meaningful use, turning it into something good. On a daily basis, we share our findings and findings of our partners with all the ISPs which either operate in Estonia or who have registered their IPs to Estonia, upwards of 100 each day. The system aggregates, sorts, deduplicates, enriches, pulls a lot of information together that is given by a little bit of data. This is then pushed out towards the organizations, and they have a good understanding of their threat landscape. For ISPs, this is not only their threat landscape, this is the threat landscape for their customers. We do hope they pass it on, but eventually, or inevitably, not all of this is passed to the right place. To mitigate this gap, we've started working more and more with organizations directly to share the information that is relevant to them. The more precisely we can reach to the right person, the more we can ensure that the data ends where it needs and is put into good use. And individuals are also within our scope. We can't forget the little guy. Often we see people setting up their websites, doing a little bit of cyber activity, and then forgetting their stuff, or buying some commodities from the internet, connecting them to their home routers or firewalls, and exposing themselves unwillingly to the dangers. If we can reach the right person, most of them are very cooperative. These risks get mitigated. But it's not within country alone that we cooperate. We share actionable information worldwide. Now this happens to the partners where we see a very clear value, not only to them, but also to us. We do it either directly or through MISP. MISP is a great platform. I recommend that if you're not using it, please do consider taking this on. Looking things a little bit further deep, what we recognize is that a lot of people like to talk about cybersecurity. The same is not for doing it. There are more people who are keen in talking and less who are keen in doing. In our experience, this is the result not of people's bad intentions, but this comes from poor understanding of the threat landscape, or to put it simply, ignorance. Not deliberate, but they haven't done anything to gain knowledge. We understand that when reaching out to the right person, to the right organization, usually they are unaware of the risks that we see. However, when we do notify, those issues get solved very quickly. Most of the stuff that exposes organizations or individuals can be fixed usually very fast and doesn't cost a fortune. To mitigate the configuration error takes an administrator typically a matter of minutes. We're not talking years, we're not talking millions. This is how our performance we can measure. 2 years ago, a little bit more, we started the project with Harden Eyes. We continuously monitor some of the top sites in Estonia. And when we started both web services and email services, the correct configuration was only there for about 20% of the time. This a little bit more than 2 years after, has increased on both counts to more than 50%. More than 50% of the most used websites, the most meaningful websites, are configured according to best practices when it comes to security and are implementing latest standards. The same is for emails. Emails have long been considered only a source of availability. They have been tremendously poor on trustworthiness. They've been tremendously poor on protecting against spoofing, against eavesdropping. By implementing those standards, we can mitigate those risks. We've turned this email system that is primarily for availability into something more, something that we need on the 21st century. And I'm glad to see that on both counts, the levels are above 50%. However, when taking things even further on the specific cases, we got notified of an Estonian IPs which participated in a DDoS attack. This was only fairly recently, so it's easy for me to talk about this. We determined the common modality between those IP addresses. There was a common vendor that the different customers had used. We notified first ISPs directly, and this is always our preferred method because it's easiest and it's fastest, and they all know who their customers are. Some got solved, but not all. We continued notifying ISPs again and again. And please bear in mind that when we do say we notify, this is a formal notification. It's not informal, although it is most practical. Then, with seeing still not sufficient progress, we sent more or less as formal letter as we could draft. That letter got attention much better, unfortunately. Within 24 hours, several of them got back to us and said that the issues had been solved by ISPs themselves, or they had passed on the contact details for the customers. We will reach out, but requesting the contact details for the customers, requesting the information of the customer themselves is much more privacy intensive, and we would rather avoid doing this, but this is a tool in our toolbox that we do use when there is no other method. I would urge to have such tools in place, but make sure that those tools are used when needed, not systematically. When we do exchange information and exchange best practices, we are looking at across the board. We work and cooperate internationally on many, many different forums. First, perhaps the most well-known in the security community, the biggest so far. TFC CERT is growing and is getting also more mature. CERT network, again, great partner, great forum to be in place. MOG or M3AAWG is a great place to be. There's a lot of industry there. We can work directly with industry partners that would be otherwise a little bit difficult to reach. And of course, we work directly between various organizations and the national teams. Our goal is to share actionable information. Actionable meaning that someone can do something to either protect their customers or to protect themselves. And this is something that we would hope to get back. If you feel like we haven't reached your team, reach us out. CERT.EE is our address. Feel free to reach them or reach us, and let's see where we can take it from here. Thank you very much.